All right. If you were born in the late 90s, or if you live with one of these Gen Zers, listen up, because we are just 3 weeks away from probably the most crucial midterm elections of our lifetime. And I know you've heard that before, but really this time. Some young voters are feeling a bit disengaged from the voting process. And in fact, the Washington Post ABC News poll found only 49% of voters aged 19 to 29 are absolutely certain to vote in November. And that was much less than their older counterparts. So I want to talk to some of these young folks. Joining me now is Chiosei. He's a New York City Council member, one of the youngest in history. Also, Victor Shi, friend of the show and co-host of the iGen Politics podcast, and the strategy director for Voters of Tomorrow. Also, the youngest delegate to President Joe Biden and current junior at UCLA. And welcome to Nyla Simone. She's a DJ and host at Power 105.1 in New York, making her return to the Cross Connection. All right, so let's kick this off. Chi, I want to start with you because young folks turn out to vote at significantly lower rates than their parents and grandparents. And, you know, you were somebody who got into politics very early, and I'm curious how you made that transition from hashtag activism to doing actual work. And how was it for you? Because I think you're only 24, if I believe correctly.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on this morning. And, you know, that's a great question. I'm asked it often. You know, I was motivated by the outrage after the murder of George Floyd and wanted to put my energy and voice to something that would create realistic change within New York City. You know, after the murder of George Floyd, I protested and then realized through my protesting how much power the city council had in terms of making change here in New York. And I took a leap of faith, decided to run for office myself, knocked doors, made phone calls, and energized a lot of young people to get engaged in local elections, and ended up winning my race. And now, you know, 10 months into my term, I'm creating local change within my district here in Brooklyn. But that was how I made that leap into politics from activism.
You know, I think that's such an important point because a lot of people think hashtag activism is the only way to impact change. And clearly there's a lot more work to be done on that. I want you all to take a listen. My wonderful colleague, Tremaine Lee, hosted, he's been doing a lot of work around HBCUs talking to young students. And this is someone who went to where I attended school, Clark Atlanta University, who weighs in on voting and why. Take a listen and we'll talk about it on the other side.
So in 2020, you know, Stacey Abrams is running, you have this huge turnout, but the numbers had been actually down here on campus. Did you get a sense that there was either a lack of enthusiasm or a lack of organizing?
People were in the streets, they were protesting and all that. It's so easy to get a turnout when things like that happen because automatically people think this is how I can get my voice heard. But it's so hard to explain to them that this is where your voice stops. It stops on the street. It has to carry on to the polls.
Victor, I want to ask you, because you are very instrumental, you're very outspoken on voter engagement, GOTV efforts, et cetera. What's been the biggest challenge for you getting more people, your peers involved in the process?
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, thank you so much for doing this panel and so great to see you again. For a lot of young people, I would agree with the student who was just interviewed. You know, there is a lack of engagement on many parts, but I think you're starting to see that changing. For me, one of the biggest challenges for engaging young voters is really getting that message out there and getting them to care about the issues. I think, like you said at the outset, you know, every election we say that it's the most important election, that it's the most, you know, the critical election of our lifetime. But this time it feels like it's true. You see a lot of Republicans making an effort to really denigrate our lives and our identities, while Democrats are really taking strides to make our lives better. And so part of the challenge now is how to communicate that to young people and young voters. And I think you can't just tell them that this election is the most important or to go vote again. You really have to find those issues that are important to young people, that affect their lives, and then speak to them on an individual basis. I think those individual conversations with young people are really going to be key as we head into the midterm elections, and then really doing everything we can to make the choice between both parties as crystal clear as possible, because it couldn't be starker. And you just saw that last night with Herschel Walker and Reverend Warnock, the difference between someone who actually cares and thinks through policy and someone who doesn't and just shows a prop as you know, with a police badge. And so I think the difference is clear, and we have to make that clear to young people and find issues that resonate with them.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point because while those viral moments tend to bubble up to the top, there are so many other important policy issues that don't always bubble up in your Instagram feed or on TikTok that, you know, maybe young people are missing. Which brings me to you, Nyla. I want to play a clip of this video from Saucy Santana and Trina that they did called "No Voting, No Vucking," and I'm saying that with a V just to be clear to our viewers. But take a look at this video, and then I'm going to ask you about this on the other side.
This midterms for all the single cuties. Wanna hit this booty, gotta do your civic duty. Now voting, no loving. Now voting, no touching. Now voting, no nothing. Now voting, no voting, no.
I have to say, I just wonder who is this video targeted to, and is this the thing that's going to get people to the polls? Because we might be in trouble. But why I wanted you here, Nyla, is because you're not somebody who's overly politically engaged, and you have a lot of thoughts on why some of your peers are not as engaged and maybe not voting as much. And I just think you have great insight into this. So if you will, weigh in on that.
Thank you for having me, Tiffany. And I love Saucy Santana, I do, but that video is not encouraging me to go vote. I have to be honest. And I think really the biggest disconnect between, I think, Gen Zers and even like lower millennials and voting is just that it's not easily accessible. Like we're in the technology era where we're ran by technology. Like literally, I just applied for student loan relief, and it took under a minute. You know, I got the link, it was dropped in my group chat, we all applied, and it's a done deal. I feel like voting for presidency should be the same way. And then also when it comes to politics, I feel like, you know, there's so much things being thrown at us online, propaganda, and it's just hard to tell what's real, what's fake in this day and age. So it kind of is unmotivating to go vote when you don't even know what's real anymore.
Well, because we talked about this a little bit. Like, how can people, you know, reputable news outlets, politicians, how can they break through? Because there's so much begging for your attention from streaming services to TikTok. It's like young people want their news in 30 seconds or less on TikTok while you do a dance move and with a filter. And we can't always do that. So how do people in news and politicians reach your generation, Nyla? What would you say?
I don't think that all the TikTok trends and social media trends are the appropriate ways, because I've been seeing twerking, I've been seeing some tapes going around. I don't think that's like how you win this over, because at the same time, it still needs to be tasteful. But I would say I want to give a shout out to Congressman Bowen, who came on my podcast.
Congressman Jamal Bowman, yes.
He came on the What Hip Hop podcast. It's iHeartMedia / Black Effect. And he was talking to us about the Rap Act that he's helping to get pushed forward. And, you know, it's important to the hip hop community. So I think it was really smart for him to want to even talk to us about it. And honestly, after talking to him, it made me feel like, you know what? There's good people in this, even though it's hard to tell online. But I think just actually connecting with people and meeting them where they're at.